The first signs. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the blood sample through her microscope, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the focus. The cells she observed defied everything she knew about human biology. They weren't just mutating. They were evolving in real time, restructuring themselves in ways that should have been impossible. Dr. Chen. Her assistant's voice snapped her attention away from the microscope. She's awake. Down the hallway of Millbrook General Hospital, 16-year-old Maya Roberts sat upright in her hospital bed, her skin glowing with an otherworldly iridescence. Just yesterday, she had been wheeled in with third-degree burns after a house fire. Today, her skin was pristine, as if she'd never been injured at all. "How are you feeling, Maya?" Dr. Chen asked, trying to keep her voice steady as she entered the room. The girl's eyes met hers. They had changed too, now containing subtle rings of gold around her pupils that hadn't been there before. "Different," Maya replied, examining her hands. "Like there's electricity running through my veins. And I can feel everything." The nurse down the hall with a paper cut. The man in the ER with a broken arm. "I can feel their pain, and somehow, I know I can help them." Dr. Chen pulled up a chair beside the bed, her heart racing. In 20 years of medical practice, she'd never encountered anything like this. "Maya, your blood work shows some remarkable changes. Your cellular structure is unlike anything we've ever seen. Do you remember anything unusual before the fire?" Maya shook her head, then paused. "There was this meteor shower last month. I spent hours watching it from my backyard. The next day, I had this weird fever, but it passed quickly. I didn't think much of it until—" She gestured to herself. Before Dr. Chen could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from her colleague in the ER. "Need you immediately." Similar case. She hurried downstairs to find a young man, maybe 20, who had walked in with a severe case of appendicitis. By the time she arrived, his symptoms had completely vanished. Over the next week, reports began flooding in from across the city. A construction worker who survived a 30-story fall without a scratch. A drowning victim who developed the ability to extract oxygen from water. A child with terminal cancer whose tumors disappeared overnight, leaving behind enhanced regenerative abilities. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly, documenting each case, analyzing blood samples, and watching as humanity seemed to leap forward on the evolutionary ladder. But she wasn't the only one paying attention. Black SUVs began appearing outside the hospital. Men in suits conducted quiet interviews with staff. Military personnel disguised as maintenance workers installed new security cameras. When General Marcus Hayes finally approached her, Dr. Chen wasn't surprised. "Your research is now classified," he stated without preamble. "You'll be heading up a new task force to study these anomalies. This facility will be converted into a specialized research center, effective immediately." "These are people, not anomalies," Dr. Chen argued, thinking of Maya's compassionate desire to heal others. "They're scared and confused. They need support, not surveillance." Hayes' expression hardened. "What they need is containment. The public isn't ready for this, Doctor. Imagine the panic if people realized human beings were spontaneously developing supernatural abilities. We need to understand this phenomenon before it spreads further." But it was already too late. That evening, as Dr. Chen reviewed her files, Maya Roberts disappeared from her hospital room. The security footage showed nothing, just static and then an empty bed. On her pillow lay a note. "Others like me are out there. We'll find each other. Don't worry about us, Dr. Chen. Sometimes evolution needs to happen in the shadows." The next morning, 3 more patients vanished. The government classified everything, but they couldn't contain the whispers. Humanity was changing, and no amount of bureaucracy could stop it. Dr. Chen sat in her office, looking at Maya's last blood sample, and made a decision. She couldn't stop evolution, but she could try to understand it. And maybe, just maybe, help guide humanity through its next great leap forward. As she packed up her research notes, a small news article caught her eye. Reports of mysterious healings were popping up in cities across the country. The change wasn't confined to Millbrook anymore. It was spreading. And this was only the beginning. Underground network. 6 months after Maya's disappearance, an abandoned subway station beneath New York City hummed with activity. What was once a forgotten relic of urban infrastructure had become a sanctuary for those who could no longer live in the light. Amber Torres, a former social worker who could now manipulate electrical fields, had transformed the station into what the residents called Haven. Salvaged computers lined the walls, their screens displaying a network of similar safe houses across the country. String lights powered by Amber's own energy cast a warm glow over the gathered mutants. They preferred the term evolved, as they worked to build their hidden community. "We've got 3 more incoming from Boston," Amber announced, her fingers dancing over a keyboard as static electricity crackled in her hair. "Twins who can share consciousness, and a teacher who developed precognitive abilities. The government's running nationwide screenings now. We need to get to these people before they do." Maya, now a leader among the evolved, looked up from where she was healing a newcomer's injuries. Her golden eyes had grown brighter over the months, and her healing powers stronger. "How are they tracking us?" "Satellite thermal imaging," said Marcus Webb, a former NSA analyst who joined their cause after developing the ability to process and analyze data at superhuman speeds. His eyes flickered with streams of binary code as he spoke. "They've identified a unique heat signature that most evolved give off. But I'm working on a countermeasure." The newcomer Maya was healing, a teenage boy named Carlos, sat up with a gasp. "Why are they hunting us? We could help people." "Maya healed my sister's leukemia before we had to run." "Fear," Amber replied simply. "And control. The military wants to weaponize us. The pharmaceutical companies want to replicate our abilities synthetically. The religious extremists think we're an abomination. Take your pick." An alarm flashed on one of the screens. Marcus's eyes went wide. "We've got a situation in Chicago. They're raiding a safe house. 23 evolved inside, including 8 children." Maya stood. "I'm going." "Not alone," said a voice from the shadows. James Chen stepped forward, Dr. Chen's son, who developed teleportation abilities 2 months ago. The government had tried to use him as leverage against his mother, but he'd escaped and found his way to Haven. "I can get us there in seconds." The next few hours were chaos. James teleported teams of the Evolved to Chicago, evacuating the safe house moments before government forces breached it. Maya healed those who were injured in the escape. Amber shorted out the military's equipment, buying precious time. By dawn, all 23 had been safely relocated to various havens across the country. But the close call had shaken them. As the leadership gathered in Haven's makeshift command center, the debate that had been brewing for months finally erupted. "We can't keep running forever," Carlos argued. "There are more of us every day. The latest estimate suggests 1 in every 10,000 people has the potential for mutation. If we expose ourselves, they'll just crack down harder," Amber countered. "We need more time to build our network, to get stronger." Maya, who had been quiet, finally spoke. "What about my mother?" The room fell silent. Dr. Sarah Chen had become a controversial figure among the evolved. While she remained within the government program, she had been secretly feeding information to the underground network, helping them stay 1 step ahead of military operations. "She says they're close to replicating the mutation process artificially," James said softly. "If they succeed, they'll create their own army of enhanced soldiers. But they won't have our humanity, our community. They'll be weapons, nothing more." Marcus's eyes flickered rapidly. New data coming in. The mutation rate is accelerating. Natural evolved are appearing faster than anyone predicted. And he paused, his expression grave. "They're getting stronger. Each new generation of mutations exhibits more powerful abilities than the last." Amber ran her hands through her electrically charged hair. "So what's our play?" Maya stood, her decision made. "We stop hiding. Not all at once, but strategically. We show the world that we're not weapons or monsters. We're the next step in human evolution. And we do it before they can create their artificial mutations. That's suicide, James protested. No, Maya smiled, her golden eyes gleaming. That's evolution. And this time, we guide it. Not in the shadows, but in the light. As if in response to her words, the lights in Haven flickered, and somewhere in the distance, a baby began to cry. The first child born to two evolved parents. The underground network had become something more than a refuge. It had become the cradle of humanity's future. And in her government lab, Dr. Sarah Chen received a message from her son. It's time. Are you ready? She looked at the artificial mutation formula on her screen, her finger hovering over the delete key. Above her, through layers of concrete and steel, a new world was being born. The only question was, would humanity embrace its evolution or try to control it? Project Prometheus. Deep within a classified facility in the Nevada desert, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the rows of stasis tubes before her. Each contained a volunteer soldier, their bodies suspended in a pale blue liquid as the artificial mutation formula coursed through their veins. Project Prometheus, they called it. Humanity's attempt to control evolution itself. Remarkable progress, Dr. General Hayes said, studying the vital signs displayed on nearby monitors. Subject 7's cellular reformation is proceeding exactly as planned. Sarah nodded mechanically, hiding her revulsion. What Hayes saw as progress, she saw as perversion. The artificial mutations were creating perfect soldiers, yes, but at a terrible cost. Unlike the natural evolved, whose abilities seemed to enhance their existing personalities and often came with an increased capacity for empathy, these artificial mutants were losing their humanity with each treatment. Subject 7 is ready for testing, a technician announced. The soldier emerged from his tube, water cascading off his enhanced physique. His skin had hardened into a substance stronger than Kepler, and his eyes glowed with an artificial red light. A far cry from the natural golden hue of Maya's healing gaze. Target acquisition test beginning, Hayes announced. Sarah watched in horror as Subject 7 demonstrated his abilities. His enhanced strength and armor-like skin were impressive, but there was something mechanical about his movements, something inhuman in his eyes. When he effortlessly crushed a solid steel beam, he didn't even blink. Perfect, Hayes smiled. How soon can we replicate this in the other subjects? Before Sarah could answer, alarms blared throughout the facility. Security feeds showed multiple breaches at different entry points. Impossible breaches, walls becoming intangible, guards floating helplessly in the air, electronic systems going haywire. The evolved, Sarah whispered, equal parts terrified and hopeful. James materialized in the center of the lab, his presence triggering chaos. Guards raised their weapons, but their guns suddenly disassembled themselves in their hands, the work of a teenage girl with mechanical manipulation abilities who had phased through the wall behind them. Mom, James said simply, it's time to choose. Subject 7 moved with incredible speed, charging toward James, but he froze mid-stride, held in place by Amber Torres, who had entered through the facility's electrical system. Maya appeared next, having been teleported in by another team member. Stop, Hayes commanded, drawing his sidearm. This is a government facility. You're committing treason. Maya stepped forward, her golden eyes fixed on Subject 7. Look what you've done to him, she said softly. His body is enhanced, but his soul. She reached out, her healing power probing the artificial mutation. You've stripped away everything that made him human. We did what was necessary, Hayes argued. You and your kind are too unpredictable. We needed control. Control. Amber laughed, electricity arsing between her fingers. Evolution doesn't ask permission, General. It doesn't follow orders. It adapts, grows, transforms. Sarah moved to stand beside her son. The artificial mutations are flawed, General. Each subject shows decreasing emotional capacity, reduced empathy, loss of individual will. We're not creating enhanced humans. We're creating biological weapons. That's the point. Dr. Hayes smiled coldly. Weapons follow orders. Subject 7 suddenly broke free of Amber's hold, his enhanced strength overwhelming her abilities. He charged again, but this time Maya stood her ground. As he reached for her throat, she placed her hand on his chest. Golden light pulsed from her palm. The soldier froze. Color flooded back into his artificially pale skin. The red glow in his eyes flickered and faded, replaced by natural brown. He blinked, looked at his hands, and began to weep. "What did you do?" Hayes demanded. "I healed him," Maya said simply. "Not his body. That was already enhanced. I healed his humanity." Sarah quickly moved to her computer, transmitting files to Marcus back at Haven. The formula, the research, everything they would need to create more artificial mutants. It's gone. She turned to Hayes. "Evolution will proceed naturally, as it should." "You don't understand what you've done," Hayes snarled. "The world needs order, control." "No," James said, putting his hand on his mother's shoulder. "The world needs growth, change, hope." He looked at the other stasis tubes. "Maya?" She nodded, moving to each tube, healing each soldier in turn. As they awoke, confusion turned to understanding, then to gratitude. The artificial mutations remained, but now they were tempered with humanity restored. "General Hayes," Maya addressed him directly, "we're not here to fight you. We're here to show you a better way. These men and women, they can be your bridge between the military and the evolved. They understand both worlds now." As if to demonstrate, Subject 7, now remembering his name was David, created a protective barrier around Hayes. "We can protect people," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "But we'll do it as humans, not weapons." Sirens still blared, and more guards would come, but something had shifted. In healing the artificial mutants, Maya had created something unprecedented. A middle ground between control and chaos, between fear and hope. "Time to go," Amber announced, the facility's electronics beginning to spark and fail. Sarah looked at her son, then at the lab she'd worked in for months. "The next step," she said, taking James's hand. As they teleported away, leaving Hayes with his newly humanized soldiers, Maya's voice echoed in the failing lights. "Evolution isn't your enemy, General. Fighting it is." In Haven, Marcus received the transmitted files, ensuring the artificial mutation formula would never be replicated. The underground network had struck a crucial blow, not through violence, but through healing. But the real work was just beginning. Bridging the gap between the evolved and traditional humanity would take more than one night's victory. The question remained, could the world accept not just the existence of the evolved, but the reality that evolution itself could not be controlled? Evolution's edge. 3 months after the raid on Project Prometheus, the world teetered on the edge of transformation. News of the evolved could no longer be contained. Amateur videos of supernatural healings, gravity manipulation, and spontaneous mutations flooded social media faster than government agencies could suppress them. In Times Square, a massive screen displayed CNN's breaking coverage. Evolution Revolution. Humanity's next chapter. Below, crowds gathered, their reactions split between awe and fear as a young evolved demonstrated her ability to create beautiful light sculptures in the air. At Haven, now expanded into a vast underground complex, Maya and her council watched the world's reaction unfold. Marcus processed the global data streams, his cybernetic abilities sorting through millions of social media posts, news articles, and government communications. "Public opinion is divided," he reported, data scrolling across his eyes. 42% express fear or hostility. 35% show support or curiosity. 23% remain undecided. But there's a trend. Wherever evolved openly help their communities, acceptance rates spiked dramatically. Amber, who had become Haven's head of security, crossed her arms. And the backlash? Growing, Marcus admitted. Anti-evolution groups are forming. Some religious organizations are calling us demonic. 3 pharmaceutical companies have offered billion-dollar bounties for captured evolved, claiming medical research purposes. They still want to control it. Maya sighed. She touched a screen, bringing up footage of David, formerly Subject 7, testifying before a closed Senate committee. His presence there was part of their strategy, showing that even artificially enhanced individuals could retain their humanity. Dr. Chen, who had fully joined the evolved movement, entered the command center with urgent news. They're pushing for registration. The UN Security Council is debating a resolution requiring all evolved to be documented and monitored. Like that worked so well with mutants in those old comic books, James quipped, teleporting in with fresh intelligence. But we've got bigger problems. Some of the new evolved are different. Maya's golden eyes narrowed. Different how? More powerful, less stable. He projected a hologram, another new evolved ability he'd developed. It showed footage of a teenager in Seoul who had accidentally created a localized electromagnetic pulse during an emotional outbreak, shutting down half the city. The mutations are accelerating, becoming more dramatic, and not everyone can handle the changes. Before they could discuss further, alarms blared. Marcus's eyes widened. Multiple situations developing globally. Paris, an evolved child losing control of weather manipulation abilities. Moscow, anti-evolution protesters clashing with evolved rights supporters. Rio, a new mutation manifesting as a collective consciousness across an entire neighborhood. We need to show them a better way, Maya decided. No more hiding. No more shadows. She turned to the council. It's time for the Unity Protocol. The Unity Protocol was risky, a coordinated global revelation of evolved abilities, focused entirely on helping humanity. They had prepared for weeks, positioning evolved individuals in major cities worldwide. Begin the countdown, Maya commanded, and patch me into the emergency broadcast system. Amber's electricity merged with Marcus's cyber abilities, overriding global communications. On every screen, every device, Maya's face appeared. Her golden eyes seemed to glow with inner light as she addressed humanity. People of Earth, she began, you've seen the videos, heard the rumors, felt the fear and wonder of what humanity is becoming. Today, we show you the truth, not through words, but through actions. Around the world, evolved emerged. In hospitals, terminal patients found themselves healed. In areas of natural disaster, rescuers with supernatural abilities saved those beyond normal reach. In drought-stricken regions, weather manipulators brought rain. In congested cities, telekinetics cleared traffic accidents in seconds. We are not your enemies, Maya continued. We are not your superiors. We are human beings, experiencing the next step in our species' journey. Evolution isn't a disease to be cured or a weapon to be harnessed. It's a gift to be shared. The demonstrations continued for hours. Every act of power was an act of service. Every display of ability was a display of compassion. The world watched, spellbound, as humanity's potential unfolded before them. But not everyone was convinced. In Washington, emergency sessions convened. In Vatican City, theological debates rage. In corporate boardrooms, executives plotted to maintain control. And in hidden laboratories, those who had worked on Project Prometheus wondered if their artificial mutations could be weaponized against the natural evolved. As night fell over Haven, Maya watched the global reactions with her council. This is just the beginning, she said. The hardest part comes next, helping humanity accept not just our existence, but the reality that any of them could be next, that their children might be born different. That change is not just coming, it's here. Marcus's eyes flickered with incoming data, new manifestations increasing exponentially. The Unity Protocol. It seems to have accelerated the mutation rate, as if evolution itself is responding to our openness. Or maybe, Dr. Chen suggested, Studying the patterns, humanity is finally ready to embrace its potential. In Times Square, the light sculptor continued her display, now joined by others. Together, they created a vision of humanity's future, a world where natural and enhanced abilities worked in harmony, where evolution served compassion rather than conflict. But as the lights danced above the awestruck crowd, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The final battle for humanity's future was approaching. Would the world choose evolution or extinction, progress or control, unity or division? The answer would come soon enough. New Dawn. 1 year after the Unity Protocol, humanity stood at its defining moment. The emergence of the evolved had transformed society in ways no one could have predicted. Cities had adapted to accommodate those with gravity-altering abilities, with special lanes for aerial transit. Hospitals partnered with healers like Maya. Schools developed programs to help children manage emerging abilities. But beneath this progress, tension simmered. In a fortified bunker beneath the Pentagon, General Hayes studied satellite footage of a growing crisis. A teenage evolved in Bangladesh had manifested an ability to influence tectonic plates. His nightmares were triggering earthquakes across Southeast Asia. The threat is clear. Hayes addressed the emergency UN Security Council meeting via secure video link. These powers are becoming too dangerous to remain unchecked. Project Prometheus must be reinstated. At Haven's new headquarters, now a legitimate international research center, Maya and her council watched the proceedings with growing concern. Marcus processed the tactical data while Amber maintained their quantum-encrypted communications network. "They're mobilizing," James reported, teleporting in from his global reconnaissance. "Military units worldwide are preparing for something big, and they've got new tech, dampening fields designed to suppress evolved abilities." Dr. Chen looked up from her research station. "It's worse than that. The artificial mutation formula we thought we'd destroyed. Someone kept a backup. They're manufacturing it on an industrial scale." Maya's golden eyes flickered with concern. "How long?" "Hours," Marcus answered, streams of data reflecting in his cybernetic gaze. "They're planning a coordinated global strike against major evolved populations. But there's something else." He paused, his expression troubled. "The artificial mutations. They're unstable. If they proceed with mass deployment, the genetic damage could affect generations." "Then we show them," Maya decided. "Not just what we can do, but what we could all become." She activated their global communication network, not to broadcast this time, but to connect. Millions of evolved worldwide linked minds through their various abilities, creating a vast psychic network. For the first time, humanity glimpsed its true potential. Through this connection, they shared everything. Their fears, their hopes, their dreams. The mother whose healing touch had saved her cancer-stricken child. The firefighter whose thermal manipulation had prevented a nuclear meltdown. The teacher whose empathic abilities helped troubled youth find peace. In Washington, Hayes and his forces prepared to launch their strike. But as they moved to deploy, something unprecedented occurred. The artificial mutant soldiers, led by David, stood down. "We are not your weapons," David declared, his humanity restored by Maya's healing fully asserting itself. "We are the bridge between what humanity is and what it could become." In that moment, the psychic network expanded. Not just evolved, but ordinary humans began to feel the connection. They experienced firsthand the truth that the evolved had discovered. Evolution wasn't about power, but about potential. Every human carried within them the seeds of change. Maya appeared before the UN Security Council, not in person but as a projected presence. "Look at what we can achieve together," she said, her voice resonating with the combined hope of millions. Evolution isn't a threat to humanity. It is humanity, reaching for its next level of existence. Through the network, they showed the world the cost of fighting evolution. The genetic damage from artificial mutations, the psychological trauma of suppressing natural abilities, the lost potential of a species at war with its own advancement. Then they showed them the alternative. Evolved worldwide, demonstrated their true purpose. The teenager in Bangladesh, now connected to others who could help control his ability, learned to use his tectonic influence to prevent earthquakes rather than cause them. Healers combined their abilities to cure previously incurable diseases. Weather manipulators collaborated to reverse climate change effects. This is humanity's crossroads. Maya addressed the world. Not a choice between normal and evolved, but a choice between fear and acceptance, between stagnation and growth. In the bunker, Hayes watched as his own soldiers laid down their weapons. The dampening fields were deactivated. The artificial mutation production facilities were shut down. Humanity had made its choice. One by one, nations signed the Evolution Accords, a new international agreement recognizing evolved rights while establishing ethical frameworks for ability use. Haven transformed from a hidden sanctuary to a global research and training center, helping both new evolved and traditional humans navigate the changes. Years later, Maya stood atop the renamed Haven Tower, watching the sunset over a transformed world. Flying vehicles wove between buildings as gravity manipulators directed traffic. Healing centers glowed with golden light. Schools buzzed with children learning to control newfound abilities while others waited for their own evolution to manifest. Was it worth it? James asked, teleporting beside his old friend. Maya smiled, her golden eyes reflecting the dying sun. Evolution was never about the abilities, she said. It was about becoming more than we were, not just as individuals, but as a species. Below them, a new generation grew up without fear of their potential. The mutations continued, each more remarkable than the last, but now they were welcomed, studied, understood. Humanity had not just accepted evolution, they had embraced it, becoming active participants in their own advancement. And what comes next? James wondered. Maya looked to the stars, where humanity's newest evolved were already exploring possibilities beyond Earth. That's the beauty of evolution, she said. The next step is always just the beginning. In hospitals, schools, laboratories, and homes across the world, humanity continued to change, to grow, to evolve. Not as weapons or monsters, but as pioneers of their own destiny. The mutation that had begun in a small-town hospital had become a revolution of consciousness, transforming not just human bodies, but human potential itself. The future was no longer a place of fear, but a frontier of endless possibility. And somewhere, in the genetic code of every human being, the next evolution waited to emerge, ready to write the next chapter in humanity's ever-unfolding story.